Anytime you're ready, CB. Good evening, welcome to the planning board meeting for Tuesday, October 3rd. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of members, Tom Young, Chair.
Joe Blanchett, alternate.
Steve Perry, Selectman Rep.
Kimberly Queenan, member.
Missing this evening, Dave Samuel, who was supposed to meet us on telephone but didn't for some reason. Mike Croto, Tyler Perry,
And Matt.
and Matt Shoemaker. Is there any public input? Seeing none. Demolition Review Ordinance and Heritage Commission Proposal.
Okay. I have handouts for everybody in case you don't want to toggle back and forth between the screens. Yeah. They don't work, do they?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna need you, Jen, to point to the correct box when we talk about it.
Mousy.
Yep. Okay, we'll just jump right in. And we're not gonna read the whole thing, I'll just give you the highlights and we can look at the picture. Meeting was held on September 26th at the town hall. We met with Troy Brown, Litchfield's town administrator. Tom Young was present, I was present, and Jen Sins from the Nashville Regional Planning Commission was there. We wanted to review this current demolition process here and the Heritage Commission that would be needed for this process to be invoked. We wanted to get Troy Brown's expertise or any experience he had with it and incorporate it into the process. Okay, so he had the following recommendations. Can you go to the structure deemed unsafe? Right out of the block, he went after this one saying he did not want everybody to come in here, every application to come in and it's unsafe, 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 and the whole process is ignored. He wanted to introduce a check and balance system to not only be the building inspector, code enforcement officer of the town, but also bring the fire department into this as well to have them both deem it unsafe, or one of them deem it unsafe. Let's see what else. So he was also said if it was deemed unsafe, you still might want to bring the Heritage Commission in to see if they wanted to document it, take pictures as well before it came down. The example he was using was if a barn was ready to fall over anyway, it is unsafe. Maybe you still want people to come in and document and see if there's artifacts they can take or reuse the wood. Just so you know, tonight the planning board's not making any decisions on any of this. I'm just telling you what Troy said, and we can talk about those afterwards. I have a planning board discussion. We can talk later if you want to have a check and balance decision other than the building, enforcement, or the code inspector and enforcement officer. Fire department, maybe there's other people you think should be involved, or maybe you want to leave it as is. Okay, and then the other decision would be if it is unsafe, do you want to allow the Heritage Commission to be notified? Okay, is everybody okay with that first? What Troy said for the first step? Okay. On that same line where we had the parameters that the structure had, well, we should say the building had to be greater than or equal 500 square feet and greater than or equal to 50 years old. He suggested that Litchfield had a building boom from the 1960s to 1970s, that maybe we want to change anything greater than 50 years old to say anything built prior to 1960. Well, pick whatever number you want. That would make a lot of the people who just have older homes not have to go through this process, right, in the future as well. Does that make sense to everybody on that, to avoid a cascading of people trying, just trying to make their life a little easier? I just made a note here for the planning board at the end of page 1 to just say, say 30 years out, they decide that the 1960s year maybe needs to be changed to 1980, 1990. Let them go through the planning board and zoning ordinances and the current. Now, if it's 5 years out, they're gonna have to go through this as well. I don't see that happening, but. Okay, so that was his second suggestion. He also said at this step, he thought the 500 square feet parameter might be a little small. That's two people who have said that. The code enforcement officer, building inspector said the same thing. He gave examples such as a town pound. I guess some towns that have kept some historical buildings or structures. And the town pound was anything where loose livestock was put in till the owner came, or corn cribs or farm cribs for food. He was just saying that, but again, the discussion can be held later. Okay, number 3 was when we look at this chart here, we just converted it to English to create the zoning ordinance. We did this for buildings only. He suggested maybe we want to include a building according to our zoning ordinance that we wrote up as anything that includes a roof. He suggested maybe we want to talk about structures, which I know is opens a can of worms here. He said things like gristmill, will, rocks, markers that the town has. Jen, do you want to talk about fences, which would be considered a structure, that we want to omit that?
Yeah, just in general, the definition in the zoning ordinance today for structure includes anything built, including a fence, which is why part of when we went through and did the dimensional requirements updates a couple of years ago, we exempted fences from the list of structures that weren't permitted in the setback. It's just other things like that in the definition of structure that might be too broad for what you want to capture.
So just think if you really want it to be buildings or buildings and structures. And then if it is structures, maybe you want to start omitting fences that have to have setbacks and all those rules that start to be invoked. Okay. The blue and yellow sections on the timeline. Up here it's color, my handout is not. He wanted to change the building inspector and code enforcement officer and potentially the fire department to be a 3-day window instead of 5-day window. And he wanted to change the Heritage Commission to have a 5-day business day window instead of a 3-day business window. He just flipped them. It still kept the timeline the same. We did have the code enforcement officer, building inspector walk by, and we asked him impromptu if that 3-day window was okay, and he seemed to think it was, but that does not have the input of the fire department. So that would probably still have to be looked at. I don't know, again, the fire department came up last week. I don't know if there is a database of any write-ups the fire department does if a building's unsafe, or citations that Kevin could look at. Would have to research that question. Okay. It came up of what happens if a deadline is missed. We have these times lines on the right-hand side of the flow here. It was joked that we never miss deadlines, but if one was missed, we probably should discuss that. The reason I bring that up is the planning board may be creating a zoning ordinance here, but we're relying on other people outside the planning board to adhere to those timelines. So we'd have to maybe firm that up a little bit. Okay, number 6, the property owner putting the first notice on their property, the sign that we put on their property for the public to see as they're going by. We had a difference of opinion. Some people thought somebody from the town should do this, whether it's the building inspector, code enforcement officer, or Heritage Commission person. Some people thought it should be the owner of the property or their representative. Troy seemed to think he was trying to protect the town by putting the burden on the owner to do it, to minimize a potential of missing one of these deadline dates if the Heritage Commission can't get out there in 5 days or the code enforcement officer can't get out there. That's, again, his opinion. But again, it's for discussion on how this is really going to work in this process. Okay, number 7. There is a dependency that a Heritage Commission has to be formed before this can work. He suggested in the zoning ordinance we had 2 dependencies put into the wording. It's dependent on a passage and a creation of a Heritage Commission, that the Board of Selectmen would approve that it could be done, and it would also have an effective date that the ordinance is subject to 60 days after the creation of a Heritage Commission to give time to staff it properly. So the zoning ordinance, the way it's written, 2 dependencies, a Heritage Commission has to be approved, and we need time to staff it. Which came down to Heritage Commission. Troy was always bringing up, keep the Litchfield voters in mind. We have a planning board, we have a board of selectmen, we have voters, and he was always going from the voters' point of view. He brought up 2 strategies that we had all talked about. Strategy 1 was attempt to pass 2 warrant articles in the same year. That would be the planning approves this zoning ordinance, and by applying these 2 dependency clauses in it about the Heritage Commission has to pass and we need time to staff it, go in front of the Board of Selectmen and have an ask to have approval of a Heritage Commission created. If the Board of Selectmen does not approve it, we're stopped because this process is dependent on it. Otherwise, the zoning ordinance and the Heritage Commission go before the voters at the same time. There's 4 outcomes that can happen. Outcome 1 is the Heritage Commission passes and the zoning ordinance passes. Then we're here. We meet the goal of that. If the Heritage Commission passes and the zoning ordinance fails, we have a Heritage Commission but no ordinance. If the Heritage Commission fails and the zoning ordinance passes, the demolition process is dead because we don't have a Heritage Commission. It might confuse the user or the voters, and it may be legally messy for the town. Again, it might be how strict we do number 7 here, writing in the dependency of it has to be created and staffed. If they both fail, the voters have spoken. He really had 2 concerns. It's really 3. I made a typo here. I will fix this and resubmit it so we have it accurate. Obviously, it was apparent we're creating a Heritage Commission for this process. That's how it is appearing. It may appear to the voters that something is going on. Logistically, he was afraid of outcome number 3. So he said we can do an attempt number 2, do a Heritage Commission warrant article in the 1 year, and then do this demolition process in the 2nd year. So the planning board would still go through this process to get it ready. We would go in front of the Board of Selectmen to ask to create a Heritage Commission. These are the reasons we listed, other than the demolition process, other reasons the town would want a Heritage Commission. It aligns with the master plan of preserving the town's past and future growth. We see that in all the chapters the voters have approved. It fulfills a town entity currently missing in Litchfield, which can identify and discuss historical, cultural, architectural resources that exist. It can serve to advise other boards. It can have access to grant money to get another inventory that is current of what is considered historical buildings and sites. It provides transparency to the town because it is accountable to the town where other groups may not be. The Planning Board and Heritage Commission could use this for any zoning ordinances in the future or land regulations that best serve the town. If the Board of Selectmen approves to create it, the Heritage Commission would go before the voters in the first year. It either passes or fails. And if it does pass, the zoning ordinance goes before the voters and it passes or fails. So the Planning Board has to discuss strategy 1 or 2, or maybe both go in the following year, or a hybrid, or a different solution. Other thoughts. We were going to reach out to Concord and Exeter, who have already set up a Heritage Commission, to see what worked well and what did not. Before I do number 2, Heritage Commission can be at like 3 different levels. Advisory only. They could get into districts, historic. We would try to set up just as advisory only. Don't buy land, don't do anything. It's just for advising. You did reach out to one of them already. You're reaching out to a second one right now. another option or thought would be to limit the zoning ordinance to maybe Route 3A, parts of Route 102, Cutler Road, Page Road, would have to look to narrow the focus on the buildings that would actually go through this process. If that did happen, it would, any Heritage Commission, if it's formed, would sort of already know its boundary of where it could have, I guess, I don't want to say jurisdiction, but, you know, what it could control, and would also limit more people from going into this process as well. And it might make the zoning ordinance more palatable to the user, or to the voters. Again, I don't know how many homes are in town, I'm gonna just say 2,000, but if only 200 have to go through this process, potentially, we could give them a mathematical figure of something to make it a little more easier for the voters. And that's where we are at the moment. Okay, no decisions have to be made, but suggestions and thoughts are definitely welcome.
I have a question on the strategy 2.
On which one? Number 2?
Yeah, strategy 2.
Oh, strategy 2. Okay.
Yeah, strategy 2.
Yeah.
So we want to put forward a warrant article for the Heritage Commission.
Do that in the first year that we're
And
ready.
then-
Do a Heritage Commission.
And staff it. What do they do if we don't have for a year while we wait to pass the warrant
Okay.
article on the demolition review?
It's gonna have to be staffed. The
Yeah.
Litchfield Historical Society has already offered to, if you need some people to fill it, we obviously don't want it just to be them,
But what do
but you
they
have some.
do?
What do they do? They're gonna tell you whether the building is historically significant, culturally, or architecturally significant.
I think he means aside from that.
Yeah, because
Oh, right
we
here.
won't. We wouldn't
This is what
have,
we did here, right here, the
yeah, we
bullets
wouldn't
above
have
it.
any of this yet.
The bullets above it is
Oh,
what it
all
would be
right,
used
all right,
for.
all this stuff.
All the stuff here.
Okay. So that gives them something to do while we wait for this to go through.
Yes.
And even if this doesn't go through, then they can still do stuff.
Heritage Commission, a lot
Yes.
of towns have it.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be
The difference
established
between
and
that
then
and
not being
the
able to do this. So.
Historical Society,
Yeah.
one is a semi-governing body, the other is not.
Okay.
If it's a Heritage Commission, they're in this room having meetings?
Yeah.
Maybe twice a year, or, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
whenever one goes into this process.
And that's-
Unless
that's-
they really are doing other things and they are gonna meet, but at least it's recorded with those minutes of the meeting, it falls under the town.
So yeah, in that case, I think strategy 2 is going to be the easiest way to get.
This is what, you know, it doesn't have to be decided, but it,
Yeah. Right.
I'd put them both out there. I'm not worried about the outcome 3. Can't worry about things.
are we
until you
allowed
have
to speak candidly at this point, or should we wait? I don't know. It's up-
It's just a town council question. So that if that situation does come about, how do you handle it and what do you do?
Set number
It
3.
would be a moot point because you don't have a Heritage Commission as outlined.
We'd have to structure the warrant article though, so that it makes, the ordinance effective upon the establishment of the Heritage Commission. So we'd need to work with her to figure out how to phrase that warrant article to make sure that if the Heritage Commission failed, but the ordinance passed, that vote would be obsolete. I don't know, I don't know.
That's where
You would
this,
just sit in limbo and wouldn't be in effect unless a commission was made.
yeah, 7A and 7B have to be met.
Right,
We
so,
have
I
to-
mean,
But you're right, you better run it by legal to make sure.
I know Hooksett had a situation, not related to this, but they had, their planning board put forth a warrant article, and then some citizens put forward a similar but different one by petition. And so they had 2 conflicting ordinances that passed, and so then what do you do? And they couldn't, they were technically supposed to be administering both, but they couldn't because they conflicted with one another. And then I think they ended up having to do special town meeting and all sorts of other stuff, which is just not the situation you want to be in. So I think that's,
Yeah,
I think that's the only concern is that can you make the passage of one warrant article contingent upon the passage of another?
And also, on this last page, I left out something very key. This planning board discussion, the last line. I don't know if the planning board wants to recommend it, but if the Board of Selectmen says no to a Heritage Commission, we don't suggest the planning board should submit a petition article to get voters to to get it on the ballot. We don't think we should do that. I'm putting it out there, but again, let the group decide.
Why not?
What do they know? Fight the pound.
So think.
Personally, I'm thinking the first step would be to get the Heritage Commission adopted.
I don't think it makes a difference, that's why I said just,
Yeah.
I'm sure council can word it so that
Yeah,
the commission would be, that the ordinance would be null and void without a commission.
Yep.
And or you just put something else under the parameters that goes to code enforcement then.
there's gonna have to be a joint warrant article between the selectmen and planning board. Because the selectmen are the only ones that can do the Heritage Commission.
Be two separate warrant articles.
Two separate, what?
Wow. I don't see it as a problem.
I mean, one option, so I spoke with Liz Durfee-Hengen from Concord. She's, in addition to being part of the Heritage Commission in Concord, she's also a historic preservation consultant in New Hampshire, so she does a lot on helping municipalities develop these types of ordinances as well. Her recommendation was start with the Heritage Commission and let them refine the demolition review ordinance and figure out where those priority locations are, so that once you have the ordinance, you've got an informed body that can quickly respond when a demo permit comes in and know, oh yeah, we've looked at this property, we know this one is critical or historically significant, and and have that background. She also said that it takes some time to train and get a Heritage Commission up to speed and ready to act and perform. That said, she also said you don't have to have a Heritage Commission to administer a demolition review permit. You can delegate that responsibility to the planning board yourselves. That would mean, though, you would need to be able to call an emergency meeting on the fly should a demolition permit come in, so that you could come in and have that initial meeting. So that's the flip side. I was just trying to look and see if there were stats on the number of building permits in your town report. Curious how many demo permits you actually get on an average year.
You have to get the buy-in from the
One.
I think if you
voters.
got two, it would be a big rush.
Yeah,
I know. So that's the flip side of it is, how many things are being demoed?
When was the last time something was?
There was a couple recent ones.
yeah.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, we don't want to confuse the voters, and if we can, we'll have to decide if it's a smaller realm, less people going through the process. If it's a 0.01% or 1%, maybe try to find a way to get the buy-in. If you still want to go through with both of these, proposals, if it's still something that wants to be done.
So. What do we do
So
next?
what do we do? Do we want time to think about it a week?
If
Ask
you-
questions? Or?
I mean, I don't have any more questions. I think that it's fine the way it is. So
So it's really well, we still have to follow up with the fire
Yeah.
department and see if you want the check and balance other than
yeah.
everything's unsafe goes
Well, you
past
already
the
have like a
process.
list of things that need to get done, and aside from those, I don't have anything to add.
I'm gonna say 50% of all buildings that are coming down, if not more, are gonna be unsafe.
Yeah.
Right.
There's not a lot of houses that get torn down that are in perfectly good condition.
Carrying it
There
down for
have
fun.
been a couple,
On 3A.
there have been a couple, but
So you're making the case that even fewer are going through this process, you know,
Yeah.
that's what we're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they gotta be alarmed. And if you say, if your house was not, I don't know if 1960 is the number, but whatever. If your house was built prior to that, you go in, but other than that, you don't go in, or maybe certain roads,
I
I don't
even
know.
think most of the houses built in 1960, you're gonna look at it and go, there's no historical.
Right, exactly, we don't wanna have to have them wait, you know, that kind of thing. If they don't even go into the process.
Could you ask your fellow board members if they have any strong objections to the Heritage Commission?
I certainly could. The Heritage Commission could also potentially make the pitch for the formation. So I'm not saying that should fall on you, but
You're saying the Historical Society should make the pitch for it?
whoever thinks, yeah, I mean,
Or Kim.
someone should make the pitch to the selectmen. Like, for me to say to the selectmen, we should form a Heritage Commission, they're gonna ask me why. So, am I the best person to pitch that, or is it somebody that actually wants this to be evolved would be the best person to pitch it?
So before it gets pitched, we have to say what it is, how many people, members are needed, what is it gonna cost, right? Which we're
Good
gathering.
first answer questions.
So, okay. Yes, I agree, that has to happen.
I mean, cost would be low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have to buy some signs, you might have to pay for a couple of meetings worth of minutes or camera work or something like that, but before selectmen have started committees that have meetings and we just absorb it.
Yep.
So this could kind of be done the same way, because what would you have, 5 meetings a year? That'd probably
If
be a
that.
lot.
That'd be yeah.
So,
Be a lot of demolition.
2 per demo permit, potentially.
right,
All right, time, we'll talk, I don't wanna waste the planning board's time, but, you know, if we're gonna hit, we still have to decide the 1-phase or 2-phase strategy, or if we would even be ready for this year as well. With the, you know, it's coming to end of year, deliberative is gonna be coming up.
I
So
believe
let's talk
this-
calendar and logistics.
I believe the selectmen are meeting 2 more weeks, so they're not meeting next Monday.
Okay.
After that, so we have that date, do we have another date after that, or is that it?
Yeah, so, all right, so let's
We
look,
don't have to
that's,
waste this time, we can do that offline.
Steve, is that the 16th?
I believe we are.
Okay.
Well, I have to check if other members of that group can come, that day, you know, that kind of thing.
No, I'll tell them on the 16th, and then I believe we all also have a meeting on the 23rd,
Oh,
because we normally do, whatever, 2nd and 4th.
Yeah,
And the second one falls on Columbus Day, and there was too many conflicts, so we just pushed it back. So we'll have 2 meetings in a row. So on the 16th, if that's what it is, I will tell them about it. And I can just send you a quick little email.
put you on the agenda for the next meeting.
I can actually just include everybody a quick little email.
Yeah.
And then if you wanna come in on the 23rd, just call Troy and ask to put on the agenda.
Okay, so we're ready, we reach out to Troy, but you're gonna at least tell him it's coming. Do you want, this is public information at this point, because we're being recorded. Do you want copies of this?
I'll bring this.
All right, I have extra copies if you need it.
Okay.
Or we have it electronically.
Yeah, this should be fine. I mean,
yeah, you got
And
the
any
flow
feedback,
chart.
they might have feedback as well, right?
So there's the flow chart, there's the draft ordinance, and then for heritage commissions, I might recommend grabbing not the Preservation Alliance, but the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources 2-page or front and back one sheet, back sheet on heritage commissions.
what is that?
Let me send them all to you.
Yes,
All right,
that'd be great.
all in one
We
email.
read about the heritage commissions, we only want the very light version, advice only.
Advice.
Not getting into districts
Yeah.
and buying property, none of that.
Yeah. So talking logistically, if we're going forward for 2018 town meeting with some shape or form of any of this, the clock is ticking. So we've got tonight. You have your meeting on the 17th, which is dedicated to the community design chapter. We could put a little bit of this at the end of the agenda in 2 weeks, if need be. Otherwise, the next meeting is, oh my goodness, November 7th. It's so
7th to
painful to
24th.
say.
You know, our zoning ordinance is out of whack now because we have to put Troy's recommendations in here, right? Fire department.
I did some of them already.
And the 500 square foot, is that too?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
we really have to still,
So yesterday, when I was working through some of this yesterday afternoon, I did some of them. The red line edits to the zoning ordinance that's posted, those represent the changes since the last time you saw it in August. It was August or was it early September?
yeah, we made a round of
Early
changes. Dave had recommended some. About
Yes.
business days to be explicit of calendar day versus business day and all of that was in there.
So we would really need to, on November 7th, nail something down and have something that we can send to hearing, timeline wise. So the clock is definitely ticking. Trying to think again, I guess if we needed a little bit more time, the second meeting in November, the 21st, again, is one of the community design chapter ones. That's, one of the meetings dedicated to community design. Again, we could tack it on at the end of that agenda, but it'll be less time in attention span left because I think everyone will be fatigued after the community design chapter because we're going to have very robust discussions. We would need to be looking at holding our first hearings on things in December with the potential to hold a second hearing in January if needed. And I think we usually aim for the first Tuesday in December and the first Tuesday in January for those. We can always use the second if needed, but if we go with the first, it gives us a little bit more wiggle room. So, yes.
So, being naive, the Heritage Commission was only brought up because of this process is really what kicked it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm hearing from whether it's a historical society, whether we're hearing from our chapters, hearing from last week's or 2 weeks ago, the people in the room, it sounds like it's positive that people want something anyway, right? I just want to be ready for when they say, you want to develop this commission just for this process, So we really have to sell it as the town needs it, or it would be beneficial to have it.
Right. This would be the primary use or primary purpose of it. But the secondary purpose could be beneficial as well.
Okay, I just want to, be
So-
prepared.
So we're going option one, or strategy one, and Troy told me to go ahead and run the strategies and whatnot past town council and have her help figure out those contingency pieces that need to be built into the warrant articles up front. Better that she tell us now that it's just not feasible, than later on in the process.
Are you okay with strategy one? I think it's a very small percent of the town.
And I think if we link the warrant articles and kind of have some clear language that shows that they're really part A and part B of a single initiative, I think that might help with some of the ambiguity of having two on the warrant at the same time. We just have to be careful in how those are crafted.
And then the one more question that I always ask you, but I want to be sure. Present this as privately owned buildings and businesses, or also tax-funded buildings as well? What do you recommend? Should it be for every building, or
I think it should be for every building.
So that would be the selectmen that need to say, we waive our governmental land use exemption
You
under
have to
this.
understand, all this is doing is making you go through a timeline,
I know.
just so that people know what's going on.
But going into the zoning ordinance, the town is exempt. Purely because it's in the zoning ordinance. So the town could say, I'm not doing that. As Troy said, there's no way that would even be possible, just purely because of the nature. Folks know what's going on in town, and if something's going to be, town-owned structure is gonna be demoed, they're gonna have a conversation at the selectmen level first before it goes anywhere. Folks will find out, folks will be here for public comment, and so this would naturally occur through the existing process, I think anyways, was his general sentiment, regarding the governmental land use exemption, but.
So what's the selectman's authority on a school? We don't control schools, but it is a town building.
It is a governmental land use.
Imagine that, huh?
I think I'll add one more bullet too on why the Heritage Commission should be there is, I think you're doing this informally anyway. Hey, we should call this person, hey, we should call, hey, did you hear that? So that we're gonna formalize what's people in good faith are doing anyway. I'll add that as well, but yeah, back to you guys, that's your state taxpayer money. Well, let's bring it up, again, let's make it transparent, let them make the decision if it's just gonna be private or all, but I just want that out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I would just, I guess, in terms of making some of the edits, in terms of some of the feedback that we heard from Troy, was there anything that gave anyone heartburn? Or are you comfortable with Kim and I chatting offline and making some of these edits and doing a little bit of the research and just bringing it back?
Very comfortable.
Yep.
All right.
The diagram that you have that you're gonna show the Board of Selectmen is the one that we showed Troy, that doesn't have this, because we wanted you to see what he was seeing and critiquing.
Yep.
Okay?
Do you want to make a couple edits first?
Again, I have to see if the fire department is even, we have to see about that
Okay.
piece, or anyone else you think there would be a check and balance.
But maybe like the dates.
Yeah, we can
on
change the
or
dates from
number of
3. You
days
just
in the
switch-
margin.
In all honesty, the building inspector, code enforcement, and the fire department are together now anyway.
Yep.
What do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Kevin
that a
works for the
formal-
fire department.
Oh, so he would know whether there was a citation, a fire citation, sprinkler problem, whatever. He would know, so he can still do it in
Yep.
3 days is what you're saying. He has access to the information.
Right, but I'm not gonna commit the fire
Right.
department to anything. I'm just saying that,
He's the same person?
no, not necessarily. Yeah. But-
Okay.
But yeah,
There's a team.
that is the ultimate goal.
How would you want it on the diagram? 2 separate entities at this point?
I just want you to make sure you ask the fire department
Right.
to make sure that that's okay.
Right.
I'm telling you, it shouldn't be a problem.
And we're just pulling in the fire department in the instance of claims that something's unsafe, so that there's more eyes that are engaged in the permitting process, and code enforcement, looking at the safety aspect.
Okay. Everybody all set with that?
You can give those to Steve. Those are extra copies. If you need more, you can email me.
Moving along to the ADU.
Big edits here. So this is simply the cleaned up version of what I shared with you. Was it in August, potentially? We had received some comments from town council that she had spotted some additional edits that we needed. And so she had just recommended that this one provision be struck from the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, simply because the town doesn't have authority to require a certificate of compliance for an accessory dwelling unit. I tried my best to argue why you should, and she didn't buy it, and I'm not the attorney, so that was it for that particular item. If this looks good, no one has any concerns, hesitations, issues, questions. At this point, the next step is to simply send it to a public hearing for ultimate consideration of moving towards town meeting.
Anybody have any questions on it?
Nope.
It is what it is.
Yeah, sounds like it was just overridden, so.
Do I have a motion?
Do we have enough people to vote?
Yes, you do.
Oh. Was I appointed as a voting member?
Huh?
Do you ever appoint me as a voting member?
No.
We will not appoint you as voting.
There you go.
Making sure all the checklist is taken care of.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to, accept the changes as written?
And send them to public hearing.
Yeah.
Send it to public hearing. That's my motion. I make a motion to send it to the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, passes 4-0-0.
Right. And are we tentatively saying that public hearing will be December 5th?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Okay.
Site plan amendments.
All right. Similar situation here. There were 3 different spots in the site plan regulations that town council spotted some additional edits that might be needed here. Site plan regulations do not go to town meeting, so while they do need to still have a hearing, you can adopt these edits at the conclusion of a hearing. So with that in mind, I will note I did leave my little margin notes that were her comments. There were, let's see, a couple items where she was just flagging grandfathering and what you can and cannot grandfather, or what you can't require someone who is grandfathered to do. And so there is a sentence deleted from the definition of non-conforming pre-existing luminaire. There is the text "and replacement outdoor" has been struck from applicability of the external lighting provisions. And what this is simply saying is that you can require things, you can apply these requirements to new. You cannot require this of existing. So what's there is what it is until it completely comes down and it goes away. That is there. At the bottom of applicability, paragraph D, again, this is essentially just reiterating the definition of grandfathered luminaire. And so needed a similar edit as the definition did above. The last one here, this one you might want to look at because I kind of tried to craft something and went around in a few circles myself, and I'm embarrassed the amount of time I probably put into 2 sentences. However, it was under general standards, there was some question on how you would administer or interpret the provision that says lighting and lights from vehicular traffic shall be shielded or buffered, etc., etc. And so council said, how do you do that and what is that? From her perspective, it was more flagging a question she had and just trying to understand how it would be interpreted, as opposed to pointing out a deficiency. She didn't say that this was anything that was was bad or you couldn't have. She just wanted to make sure that it was useful. And so when we discussed this at, again, I think it was in August, previously, I think the thought was that there are two different forms of vehicular traffic that might be generating light impacts. You can have vehicular traffic that is internal to your site plan, and you can have the vehicular traffic of the surrounding roads. Do we want to be, again, it could be it's the developer's problem if they come up with a bad design, but do you want to be creating something or enabling bad design? And so one thing is, do you want to be placing housing right fronting a T intersection so that every time a car stops at that T intersection, they're lighting up the living room of these new houses. So that was one aspect of it. And so that was thinking of the external or potentially even internal if it's a multifamily situation. And then also making sure that your traffic circulation patterns that you're creating internal on the site aren't now shining headlights into the windows of the abutting properties or, creating conflicts with your driving public on the roadway. So with all of that mumbo jumbo, I tried to craft 2 or 3 sentences that covered that. And I will not be offended if you look at it and go, dear goodness, get rid of that, Jen.
But there is one thing that's still missing there.
Yes.
The lighting for the sign cannot affect vehicular traffic.
Yes, and I do believe that is in the sign ordinance itself. We can check that.
But it should be mentioned here too.
Okay.
No?
No?
Signs
Well-
have to stay with signs.
It's
If you
lighting.
go into the next few paragraphs, though, it talks about lighting from other sources.
I mean, not to be, I am always.
Right.
It's really a waste of our time, anything we do, because they're gonna change the regulation in a year or two anyway. I've said this for
Very
10
cynical.
years. For
Yep.
10 years. Keep it simple, stupid. Because if you put 3 lines that can't be changed, it'll stay the same forever. As soon as you start adding explanations or definitions, one of them will fall through and you'll have to change it again. So, 63.4 general standards.
Yeah.
I mean, if you take away the highlighted part in the first sentence, lighting and lights shall be shielded or buffered to prevent off-site glare, sky glow, and light trespass. Isn't that very self-explanatory?
Fair enough.
To me it
And that
is.
covers my point as well.
And
To
that,
me it is.
That's true. That's true. And so then we're thinking about, when we're talking about lighting and lights, we're thinking about cars, we're thinking about signs, we're thinking about light posts, anything.
If you keep it simple, it just covers everything.
Done. I'm okay with that, if that works for you guys.
I agree
Like I
with
said,
you.
it was the most awkward bit to try and craft.
Yeah. I mean, and we have good lawyers, but let me tell you, sometimes what they ask for just
Yeah.
seems like you're just gonna run around in circles.
It may be off topic, but that sign that was on Willow Street, that big blaring sign that had to finally be covered,
Yeah.
does that cover the signs as well? It was on a building, but
It's-
that was affecting traffic.
It's still there and he's in court.
Well, he lost, I thought. He lost the case.
Well, he's
Yeah,
being
he
sued
lost
now.
the-
He's being sued
He
now.
lost, right?
He lost the case, and the damages awarded were
300 million or something,
Because of the sign?
because of what
Yeah.
the content of it. Well, I don't know about the
Yeah,
bright, I'm just talking about the
people-
brightness of
people
the
he was
sign.
naming-
the people
Distracting
who were
traffic.
targeted sued.
Yeah.
Oh, on South Willow Street? That.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I knew it was going to happen.
That is a
Figured it-
distraction on a building that I think causes a traffic problem.
Well,
Never mind
agreed.
the content of it.
I
but
Just as the
agree.
visual
And
from the
there's-
highway.
And that's it's
You
a
could see it
definite
from the
safety
highway.
concern, and Concord went to court, like federal Supreme Court, over similar signs, and Concord had ruled out any of the electronic, bright light, flashing, moving parts to them signs as a safety hazard, and someone built one, and Concord busted out their enforcement powers and said absolutely not, it's coming down, and Concord got sued, Concord appealed, it all went to the Supreme Court, Concord won. So
Whoa.
U.S.
Surprised.
U.S. Supreme Court, yeah, right. So U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that you, as a municipality, can ban those bright light, obnoxious signs that are creating a safety hazard. They are a safety
Yep.
hazard.
Yep, absolutely.
Especially in that location.
Yeah.
Oh, horrible.
But if a site plan comes in front of us, they're not gonna say they're gonna put a sign out. That came up after the building went up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think we have authority at that, you know.
They still have to come for a permit.
yeah,
They do.
yeah. Once they put up a
And,
sign,
and in
Yeah.
Litchfield,
yeah,
sign permits come before the planning board.
I heard we say that we don't allow electronic signs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember reading that.
Yeah.
I will go follow up on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No safety hazards.
I thought your second to the last paragraph there on this same section was like, I had to read it 4 times. There was a lot of information there.
Yeah.
It's fine, but it was different. I thought it was like different.
Which, wait.
The second big paragraph from the bottom on that same section. It's
On the next-
the
the,
big chunk.
The next
On the
page.
next
I think you were
Yeah.
kind of talking about
That's
you know,
existing language.
site plan
Yeah.
reviews, and then you were talking about occupation and stuff, and then it went into another. You know, it was like 3 or 4 different topics, but it was fine. I just had to reread it.
At the bottom of page 1, or
2.
oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
existing.
The middle
language.
paragraph. It was like 4 or 5 topics in there, but it's fine.
Again, it's existing. If we need to clean it up, I didn't even look at that section.
Everything there seems good.
It's accurate. Just
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they were separate.
All right, we will go with Steve's simple edit, and it solves the problem.
Could I hear that again? Because I was reading.
So
something else.
it will,
Basically,
section,
what's there in black.
yeah, section 163.4 will read, lighting and lights shall be shielded or buffered to prevent off-site glare, sky glow, and light trespass, period. And then full cutoff or partial cutoff fixtures, et cetera, maintaining the remainder of the existing language. Do you want to see that edit typed out before voting to send it to hearing, or go with
No, I
the
don't-
red version? Are we allowed
Just
to go with the
short.
red version?
what's
I
that?
think we are.
Could I have a motion?
Just print it without the red.
Yes.
I mean, I'd make a motion to. What are you making a motion for this time? 'Cause we're not sending it
Send
to.
it to hearing with the
sending
discussed
it to hearing.
amendments.
All right, yeah. So send it to hearing. I make a motion to send it to hearing again.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
All right,
All right.
that's so
Passes
simple.
4-0-0.
All right.
Community design.
I had somebody ask me if they could have the homework instructions sent to them again. Remember that big email list that went around of everybody?
I know, and I haven't done my homework.
Well, still another week.
I know.
But I didn't want to
This is-
send it myself because I think it should, I don't know who the
I know.
appointed
Was
person
it
should
somebody
be.
on the list?
It was someone on the list, so,
They all got the minutes.
Okay.
oh, they did, okay.
Okay.
So it's there, all right. Because you had it in there what the homework was.
I think so.
You get 2 weeks.
What do we have to do on this section? Community design.
Yeah, it's community design.
Yeah. What do we?
Just got a few things to bring up for
Okay.
the next meeting.
So, okay. Jumping down.
you get down to the bottom of that.
I guess, I mean, this was just a really quick
Keep going.
question.
Yeah, that one there.
So I still, for my own homework, I still need to email the full group with the photo exercise instructions, and a reminder that folks are to read the existing master plan chapters and past planning board minutes, and generate some questions that they might have related to those. So that was so that was that. And then I was also planning to take, and I posted my notes, which are also in the minutes, from the meeting. I'm going to take those and turn them into an introduction for the meeting in 2 weeks. That is what we value summary based on the feedback we received. That is it. I guess the question is agenda wise, 2 weeks from now, how do we want to structure that conversation? What are our objectives? We'll hopefully have some images from people that we can maybe do just to put them up on the screen as a slideshow of what folks have sent in. And I guess the next question is, the where do we go from here piece, and that I want to throw it out to you in terms of, do we want to start structuring, I think we talked about a visual preference survey, or potentially doing something to that effect. Or where did we want to go from here?
You had a nice roadmap in one of the links. I just have to find it. Basically, you were doing the data gathering.
Yeah.
Then it kind of morphed into the chapters being created from that. I just have to find out which link it was here.
I know, right? There's too many of them. Community Design Master Plan Subcommittee info? Yes, that was the handout we had. I mean, I think the next steps really are gathering public input. And how do we want to structure that?
Yep.
It's the one that got into, we have all these nice ideas, but we still had to have it be feasible.
Yes.
Wherever that one went.
I apologize. That was the bullet points that were brought up.
Yeah, this is good.
Here it is. Community Design Subchapter. Community Design Subcommittee Charter PDF. On the bottom, it's the fifth link down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth link down. 680K. After you get through the purpose and organization and the scope, so you get down to like 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. That's where you. I think my point was that they're gathering the data as well, and so are we on our homework assignment. You have to gather the data before you kind of morph it into the outline. And maybe do the feasibility study here, if it made sense. So follow your outline here.
Yeah.
Where is it on?
On the bottom of it, on the bottom, it's the fifth link down called 1, 2, 3, 4. Community Design Subcommittee Charter. It's a PDF. And if you get past the purpose and the organizations that we invited into the scope, we're kind of at step 2, collecting input.
So, just in terms of that conversation, then I think we should maybe throw it out as a broader conversation about how to structure that public input process, and what do we want to do for exercises, and how do they want to go about doing it? What are they willing to contribute to that effort in terms of time? And what avenues do they have to collect information? And then potentially taking some of those images that folks submit and doing more of a visual preference survey type exercise. Okay. Okay. Discussion. Outreach. All right. That's all I really had. I gotta do my homework tomorrow morning.
Anything else in community design?
I'll be all in 2 weeks.
Groundwater management. Steve, you had something to say on that?
What do you want me to say?
Did you get the memo from Troy?
What?
I don't know, today? No?
Basically, the selectmen have asked if the planning board was willing to come up with a groundwater management zone. In further discussions that I've had on the side with Jen, this may be better to do as a, what did you say, a health
Health
ordinance? And I plan on taking that to the selectmen and getting their opinion, because outreach today hasn't gotten any. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to, with the PFOA issue, is see if there isn't a way that we can now control the groundwater issue that is there. And I think that the ultimate desire is only to limit drinking water wells from this point forward.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it doesn't mean we're gonna stop anybody from, I mean, some people have the wells and they're still drinking the water now. It's just that now that we know there's an issue, we need to prevent people from doing it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So they're grandfathered in?
Because the water lines are gonna be through the affected areas anyway at this point, so.
So you're saying anyone who has a well and has opted not to tap into the line
There's
can
nothing we
use their
can,
well?
there's nothing we can do.
But if somebody wants a new well,
If somebody wants a
Absolutely.
drinking water well, we should probably restrict that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really in a nutshell, all that we're trying to get done here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a health ordinance could very well be an easier task.
Yeah. Quick.
That's about all I got to say.
That's quite a bit. It's quite a change from the original.
Well, yeah, the original thing that I forwarded you, the ordinance
Yeah.
that Raymond has in effect, that's because that's a Superfund site. So they are restricting
Right.
any
Everything,
use
yeah.
of
Yeah.
any of the water at all,
Yeah.
for any reason.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they want you to dig, if you dig a hole and you find water in it, they want you to call and get it tested. I mean, it was amazing just how stringent that one was.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's understandable where it is, what they're dealing with.
No, when I was reading through that, I says, this is gonna be,
Well, when you're on a Superfund site, you never know what's,
right,
I
that's,
mean,
that's a little different though.
what's being transmitted
Yeah.
there, so.
Luckily, we're not quite that bad.
No.
Would we do the, zoning for the health,
Well, that's part of the question.
yeah,
As procedurally, what's the norm? And I'm not certain. I'm Googling on the
I
fly
I figured I
here.
would reach out to our health officer and I would ask him as well, 'cause I'm sure he can, give us some insight on that. So,
maybe we could write something up, give it to him to have.
Well, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, you want something to kind of gels with your other ordinances, so.
Yeah.
I linked on health officer on our website and I didn't see anything come up.
what was that?
It's
I
Kevin.
wanted to see who it was.
It's Kevin.
It's Kevin.
When I clicked on it, nothing came up.
Building-
And I said, well, let me click on, the building inspector, Kevin came up. So I said, okay, the site's all right. Yeah, if you click on it, nothing, well, at least for me, nothing came up under health officer.
Yep, that's Kevin.
Wow.
One of his
Wears a
many
lot of
hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do a little bit more digging too, just procedurally how it works. I mean, we can certainly draft something that's really simple. I mean, we can use this as the basis, but just kind of cherry pick a few provisions here and there that really kind of cut to the chase and essentially draw the line and say, in this boundary that's yet to be determined, there will be no new wells. Done.
Right, because all we have to use is the site area map that's been displayed for all the PFOA testing.
Right, but I remember, was it Tom, was it you or Troy, or that sent something to DES?
And they won't have a map.
They're
until-
not gonna commit to that area yet because they're still sampling and that area could grow.
Of course it could, but for us to do something like this,
Yeah,
we can take the area that we currently know,
yeah,
and we could always expand it if we needed to in the
That's true.
future.
okay,
So, we can just go with the area that we know.
yeah. I'm trying to think, okay.
And this goes before the voters as well, right? This goes before voters?
I don't know, would that go?
I don't know if a health ordinance does.
Yeah, I don't,
Yes, legislative body.
Okay.
Oh. So, yeah, it would still have to go before the voters as an ordinance, but, it's just, essentially, it's who administers it, it's different. I guess, if it went in the zoning ordinance, it'd fall to Kevin as code enforcement. And if it went in health ordinance, it would fall to Kevin as code enforcement, or
Health officer.
health
Health
officer.
Right.
So I guess the question is, from an administration or more, an administration standpoint, it's likely to ultimately be the same either way, but from an enforcement perspective, that's what I don't know, if there are greater benefits to one versus the other, and that would definitely be a Kevin question.
Right.
That he might have a preference. And I don't know if, from the enforcement side, whether there's greater power or strength for one versus the other. All right, so we'll do something simple. I'll throw together a simple draft that prevents new drinking water wells. And I'll pull the most recent map. Okay. Got 2 copies of that. All right, that's all I had. Cruising along.
Okay. Minutes for September 19th.
I'll make
Well-
a motion to.
Yeah, half of us weren't here, so.
You can still make the motion.
Yeah. I'll do
Second.
it.
Second. Discussion?
Who seconded? You did.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained?
Abstain.
Passes 2-0-2.
Alright.
Anybody have anything for the reports this evening? Joan?
No.
Jen?
Nope.
Nothing else?
No.
Our next meeting will be October 17th. Could I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Passes 4-0-0. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.